This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
Clock Show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby. Breaking news, WABC.
And boy, what a huge news day it is here on Katz and Cosby. And of course, the highest court in the land delivered 3 big decisions. Judge Weinberg, one of them, of course, dealt with, of course, birthright citizenship. And that was the big one. You could tell President Trump was disappointed in that, and America should be disappointed.
I think it's a tragedy. That case is a tragedy because they're opening up to birth tourism. Anybody who's flooded into the country illegally, if they have a child, that child will be a citizen. Then they'll bootstrap the rest of the family in. This is very, very dangerous for the future of America. A bad decision. It was never, the birthright clause of the Constitution was never intended to allow for this birth tourism. It was to protect the victims of slavery.
Well, we got Professor Dershowitz coming on, and I want to ask him the important question. Did we ask the Supreme Court to decide in a wrong matter? And Craig Eaton, you're a famous lawyer, too, in Brooklyn, Staten Island. In other words, if you were to ask the Supreme Court to judge on it, if people were here on tourism or illegal tourist visit or illegal visit, should they have birthright citizenship?
Definitely not. Definitely
okay,
not.
But John is exactly right. You framed the question narrowly, you might have gotten a different result. That's a good point, John.
I mean, I'm not even a lawyer. I got an honorary degree from Long Island University that Mike Merlo is supposed to give me a copy of because we can't find it ever since we moved. And all I have is an honorary degree.
Okay, based on my vast powers under the state constitution, I hereby make you an honorary lawyer.
And that is the big question, because they really did kind of go for, my impression is, the whole kit and caboodle. And it's interesting. The decision I found very interesting too, Judge, because it was 5-4. And it included, I believe, there were also 2 conservative justices in that decision. This is on the birthright. It was Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Roberts, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. That's an interesting decision.
Yeah, I'm deeply troubled by this, but I think we can get some relief by having the Congress redefine the rights of what birthright means.
Yeah, because to John's point, think about all the people, and one of the things we've covered here, you guys, is also tourism, like this birthright tourism by the Chinese, who have like a whole factory where they send somebody over, they have a baby, and surprise, surprise, they're finally an American citizen. And that was one thing that was interesting in the dissent today. I was watching a lot of the coverage. In the dissent today, they came out and said they're troubled by the national security implications.
As they should be.
Right. What if it's a country, to your point, Judge, that doesn't like us, that says that's an adversary of America? What, you want to have Russians coming over here or Iranians coming over here and producing babies and creating somewhat sleeper cells eventually?
This opens up so much opportunity for people to get here and become citizens, and their families become citizens.
That's right. That's
when
the key.
They should not.
They
be
boost
here.
the whole family.
And you know what? And it's going to be intentional. They're going to say, oh, let's send 20 people there and we'll have kids.
Yeah.
It's going to be a game now.
That's the problem, guys. And that's the big thing that you and the judge so aptly are discussing, because that's the issue. It opens the floodgates.
It opens the door. Exactly.
And that also incentivizes, and this is what I think is interesting. Even the justices on the dissent today came out and said, we're concerned that this opens it up to essentially criminal activity, to say, come one, come all, more illegals to come. That's just what we need in this country right now. I mean, that's a mess, Judge.
It's just horrible. And there's a recent case also where a woman announced on her social media that she married somebody from Hamas just to give them citizenship, which, by the way, is a fraud and it's a federal crime. You imagine being stupid enough to announce on media that the purpose of this marriage, a sham marriage, is to give somebody from Hamas citizenship in the United States.
And by the way, I'm sure, sadly, that happens a lot. One of the things also tonight, you guys, polls are going to be closing in a few hours in Colorado, and everyone's going to be watching to see, is this a test of the Democratic Socialist movement expanding beyond New York? Of course, you had the 3 ones that won in the primaries here recently. And then you got, now tonight, there's 2 of them that are on the ballot, John, and they're going up against some pretty seasoned incumbents. And everyone's saying this is a test to see if it goes beyond the tri-state area.
Well, Rita, I am back.
I know you are, by the way.
I almost was not back.
By the way, you know what is amazing about you? You left and you came back all within a few hours' time. Tell everybody what you did today.
Well, we went to Cleveland, Ohio. It was I guess the Greek Orthodox Church of North America was having meetings, bringing together 560 churches and 13 dioceses, and every 2 years they get together, and it was important. We had 2,000. I spoke before 2,000 people, and the Archbishop spoke, and everything was so great. But it's time to bring all religious outfits together, and
well, the Greek Church plays a big role.
It was very, very nice, and one of the things I spoke about is we're glad that President Trump is taking care of, the Christians. Well, he's taking care of the Jews because of what's going on in Israel, and he's taking care of the Christians in Nigeria. He went in and took care of the people that were killing Christians. But this is going on all over the world, and we want to bring more attention to it.
I'm glad you did. And John, I want to also give a kudos to you because I saw some of the images. It was packed. I mean, it's a huge, vibrant population, of course, Greek Americans. That was
delegation
packed.
Of 2,000 people.
Wow. I can't wait to see the full speech later. It sounds like it was just a rousing, and how great that you went there to also show your support for such an important mission.
Is Alan Dershowitz on?
He is with us right now. Who better, by the way, on such a big Supreme Court day than him?
Nobody better than Alan Dershowitz. Alan, welcome to...
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, before you ask me any questions, I want to personally thank the Greek American community, along with the Italian American community, the Irish American community. They voted for America in these elections. The only community that fell down was the Jewish American community. A bunch of self-hating Jews in the Upper West Side and the East Side in Park Slope voted for Mamdani. For the most part, other ethnic Americans understood the common sense approach and voted against them. So thank you, Greek Americans. Thank you, Italian Americans. Thank you, Irish Americans. And no thank you, Jews, self-hating Jews who voted for Mamdani and for the 3 candidates who are Mamdani clones. So I just wanted to personally thank the Greek American community that has contributed so much to this country.
Well, thank you, Professor. And in addition, I'm thanking President Trump for watching out for the Jewish community and the Israeli and Jewish community is one people. And I'm thanking him for watching out for the Christian community. Because Christians are dying all over the world, Jews are dying all over the world, and somebody has to watch out for them.
And if you're anti-Semitic, your next group you go after are going to be religious Christians, are going to be people from other faiths, because haters hate. And, you scratch an anti-Semite and you're going to find an anti-American, you're going to find an anti-Catholic, you're going to find so many anti-Greek Orthodox. So, the world is really divided into haters and people who can understand differences between people. And one thing I love about being on your show is you always stand up for common sense, middle Americans who I think reflect the greatness of this country. And I hope we can restore that greatness through middle Americans rather than extremists on either side.
We got Melissa DeRosa coming on later on. And one of the questions I'm asking her, because she's been traveling around, and the pulse of what's going on in the Democratic Party, and how do they feel about 11 Democratic states not going to Washington to celebrate 250 years?
It's absolutely remarkable. You get this woman who was just elected, Chevalier, who hates America. I mean, she ought to be running for Congress in Tehran, not in New York City, but New York City people elected her. But we never should forget that in 1932, several thousand Jews formed a political party to support Adolf Hitler because he was going to be good for the economy. You know what happened to those Jews who voted for Hitler? They ended up in gas chambers. Yeah. And you'd think we'd learn the lesson.
And I remember the words of some of those Jews. Oh, we are loyal Germans, and Hitler knows about it.
They went to the gas chambers with their medals from First World War without realizing that Hitler didn't care what you did. It was who you are. It was genetic. You have bad blood, and that's what racism is all about. So thank God for shows like yours, which fight against it, whether it's done by Democrats or Republicans.
We stand by common sense. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I don't care if you're a Republican, as long as you have common sense.
Well, speaking about common sense, the dumbest thing the framers of the 14th Amendment ever did was to create something called birthright citizenship. It is the dumbest thing. The idea that you're a citizen just because your parents were passing through and dropped you off for one day from a hospital, and then you go back to your other country. You have nothing to do with America. You don't speak English. You don't care about America. You don't pay taxes. You can't be drafted into the Army.
They can come back and vote.
And you can come back at your choice, but you can't contribute to the country, and you can still be a citizen. But I never thought I would say this.
Yes.
But President Trump today showed he knows more about the Constitution than Chief Justice Roberts, my former student. Roberts basically said that Congress can't change who has jurisdiction over who in the United States. And President Trump said, yes, it can. The 14th Amendment says, and subject to its jurisdiction thereof. Mm-hmm. And if Congress were to pass a statute saying somebody just born in the country who stays 6 days or 4 days and never comes back is not subject to the jurisdiction, just the way diplomats' children aren't subject to the jurisdiction, just the way NATO soldiers who are stationed in the United States aren't subject to the jurisdiction. And so Congress can do that, and they better do it quick because Republicans may lose control over Congress in the midterm. So President Trump has said today, and I want to help him, pass legislation that limits birthright citizenship to those who really, really, really are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States.
Professor, I want to ask the $64 billion question.
Sure.
Is the people who appealed this birthright citizenship, did they do it wrong? Because we were talking about it amongst ourselves, and if they would have said that there's no birthright citizenship if you're a tourist, there's no birthright citizenship if you're an illegal immigrant or entered the country illegally, we would have won that case. In my opinion, as an honorary lawyer.
Well, you are an honorary lawyer and a good one. I think we would have won it if Congress had done that. I think the big issue in the case is whether the president has unilaterally the authority to declare who is under the jurisdiction of the United States. In general, it's Congress that does it. It decided that Native Americans who have their own reservations weren't subject to the jurisdiction. They passed the statute that said diplomat children. And I think it's up to Congress, not the president. So if Congress had done exactly what you said, I think still it would be upheld. Remember, it was a 5-4 decision with 2 conservatives joining the 3 liberals. And I suspect you can peel off at least one, maybe both of them, if Congress passes common sense, sensible, moderate legislation saying who is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And remember, being subject to the jurisdiction of the United States doesn't mean you can be criminally prosecuted. You can be criminally prosecuted if you never set foot in the United States. If you kill an American in England,
we go back. We still need 60 votes from the Senate.
Well, that's the hardest question. Whether you need 60 or 50 plus the vice president for something like this, I think is a very interesting issue. But eventually we're going to have to get to that decision, get to that question. But it's up to Congress right now, I think, and it's not the president's decision. It's not the Supreme Court's decision. Under Article 1 of the Constitution, it's the Congress's decision. But you're right. Congress has enforced its own rules, which make it less than a majoritarian institution. And so whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing is ultimately up to Congress to decide.
And Professor Dershowitz, before we let you go, I want to make sure we get to the transgender. That was a biggie, too. Real biggie. And great for women, I think, in sports. They upheld the ban in the 2 states. I think there's 27 states that have such a ban. But this is a big win for women in sports.
It's also a big win for the constitutional power of states. What the Supreme Court basically says, quoting Brandeis, is that states are the laboratory experimentation. And so if you have a dispute, all right, so you have some states going one way, some states going another way. That's what federalism is all about. So I think the Supreme Court was absolutely right in leaving it to the states. So it was a victory for people who are opposed to men who were born as men competing in women's sports. But it's not a complete victory because other states are still allowed to have different rules. I would hope this decision would incline other states, though, to say, at least let's have testing and make sure that people compete equally and people who are born female don't have to compete against people who are biologically, genetically stronger and faster than they are. So we have to create a system where in all states, young girls can compete equally. And there are various ways of doing it. And the Supreme Court has now said, we're going to leave it up to the states to decide.
Yeah, great points. Well, please keep us posted. Really great to have your perspective on such an important day, Professor. We love you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Always happy to join. And again, thank you so much to the ethnic communities of New York that show so much more sense than so many American Jews do.
Oh, thank you so much, and God bless America.
You too.
Thank you very much. And you guys, now we have former Homeland Security Department advisor, also former Secret Service Special Agent Charles Marino. Charles, I was watching you on Fox earlier. You were on fire. When this decision came down, this is, of course, the one on birthright citizenship. You feel this really just opens the floodgates to bigger national security issues. Explain.
Yeah, I think this is the Supreme Court signing off on the number one incentive that promotes illegal immigration, and that's birthright citizenship. And they failed to take into account, Rita, the context of the current global threat landscape. Look, it's no longer 1868 when the 14th Amendment was first ratified, or 1940 when it was codified. We've got to look at this in terms to the current environment and the environment of recent decades. And that is many individuals who are going to violate the law should not be entitled to birthright citizenship. And many of these that are violating the law are also sponsored by many of our nation state adversaries like China. We've seen this play out. It's been exploited for far too long, and it's a detriment when you get a president like President Trump and his administration who are focusing, and rightfully so, on the causation, on the entitlements that promote illegal immigration. And if you're not looking at something like birthright citizenship, then you're missing the bigger picture. So I think the Trump administration has been entirely right to focus on this and other areas in terms of quashing the way they have in historic measures the overall illegal immigration epidemic.
And you also believe, Charles Marino, too, that this is going to incentivize people. I think it does, because they just got a rubber stamp from the Supreme Court, including 2 conservative members. You can just kind of pop in and have a baby and they're a citizen.
Of course it is. This was no different than when Secretary of DHS Ali Mayorkas under the Biden administration stood at the podium in the White House briefing room and said, we're not telling you not to come. We're just asking you don't come now. This is the equivalent of what the Supreme Court did today. They're holding up the stop sign with their left hand and they're waving everybody in under the table to say this is acceptable behavior. And so we're going to see now an influx, despite of everything that the Trump administration have done to bring down overall illegal immigration at the border by over 90% and enforcing the illegal immigration laws of this country the way that they've had to decrease this overall influx, we're going to see it spike at both our southwest border and northern borders because of what the Supreme Court has done today. The American public have lost today. They've lost based on our national security for the country wasn't enforced, and also entitlements. The American taxpayers are going to continue to bear the cost through entitlements of these illegal immigrants coming into the country and having babies here.
You know, you just hit a really powerful point. The judge and I were both nodding when you're sitting there talking about entitlements, because it's not just obviously national security. It's a drain on finances. And we even saw, what was it in New York, $5 million that they spent on illegal immigrants within it was like a 2-year period. And now they just said, $1 billion, $5 billion. And now they're saying, come one, come all again. I mean, they're not giving any reason not to.
No, they're encouraging that. They're encouraging it.
Yeah, they are. Look at Minnesota, for example, with Somalians. The Somali head of households are at 87% in terms of receiving some type of welfare. And guess what? 10 years later, while they're still in the country, that only drops to 81%. What does this tell us? It tells us everything we need to know. Not only are we increasing the national security risks, because none of these individuals can be thoroughly vetted, despite what the Biden administration told us for 4 years, but they're going to continue to be a drain on the American taxpayers. So really, the Supreme Court, by ignoring the current environment that we're dealing with here, have really set the country and the American public up for failure. And some are going to pay with their lives in terms of the public safety threats that are being let into the country, and they're going to struggle to survive based on the flood of entitlements that continue to be received.
Charles Marino, John Katzimatidis. I just had we had Alan Dershowitz on the phone, and I think whoever filed the thing with the Supreme Court did it wrong, because if they would have done it saying that if people were tourists, they came in and had a baby, they're not going to shouldn't be an American citizen, and if they're illegal migrants or immigrants, it shouldn't be an American citizen either.
Well, I think
we would have won that one. What do you think?
Look, I think there's also a level of responsibility here where the Supreme Court justices need to start paying attention to what's going on outside of their bubble.
Well, they should also.
Yeah, go ahead.
Charles, it's Judge Weinberg. They also should look back at the legislative history of the 14th Amendment. This was never intended to do anything but protect the former slaves.
Exactly. That
was exactly the issue before the court. They overread the 14th Amendment.
Whoever filed it with the Supreme Court or the court case, the appeals court, the Supreme Court, the district court, they went for the entire
John, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
they should have narrowed and defined the issue, and they could have won. I agree.
Yeah, because if you said a birthright tourism,
and
it would have been different.
The other side at midnight, the Supreme Court should be smart enough to be able to say, yeah, we're not going to appeal, we're not going to accept this.
Yeah, parcel it.
But this portion is their right. If they're tourists or if they're illegal or migrants or
no way,
yeah,
no
right,
entitlement.
Right, but they didn't. They just threw it out. Charles Marino, thank you very much. It's really great.
Real quick, Rita, do any of us envision that the founders of this country could look so far forward as to imagine what we're dealing with today?
Never.
That's 250 years ago.
Right, never. That we'd have, 10 to 20 million coming in?
But it is a clear and present danger to the country.
It is.
But the drafters of the 14th Amendment, because of the Civil War, knew exactly what they were dealing with. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were trying to protect the former slaves. We got to take a break.
Thank you, Charles Marino, for coming on. And keep fighting for our country.
Thank you.
You got it.
Thank you, Charles. And you guys, we're going to take a break because we have Katie McFarland coming up talking about Iran.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
And John, I want to make sure we give a big shout out to one of our own, our great president of Red Apple, Chad Lopez, who right now, by the way, I think as we speak, is receiving the gold standard in business from Barrett Media, which is a biggie.
That is wonderful. Well deserved.
There's the applause. They're going
Congratulations,
crazy.
Chad. Look at that.
I know, he rocks. Chad is the best and obviously does so much for Red Apple and has been with Red Apple for a while, juggling everything with the Worldwide News Network and everything else, right? So well-deserved.
Well-deserved.
Well-deserved. We love you, Chad.
And let's go to KT now.
Yeah, somebody else we love. KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor under President Trump. And KT, right now, the sides are meeting in Doha. Is anything going to get accomplished, or is this just more dragging by Iran?
It's more dragging by Iran, but frankly, it does not work to our disadvantage to have this dragged out. The strait is open. Oil's getting through. The price of oil, as John predicted on this show, when everybody else said the price of oil would stay high, gasoline would stay high, John was the guy who got it right. The price of gasoline is down. The price of oil is down. And so even though the war is not maybe officially over, it's a very good thing politically for the president and Iran. Whatever Iran is doing militarily, we can, as long as President Trump can keep gasoline prices low, he goes into the midterms with a great advantage. And then, what is that expression, FAFO? I think that after the election, that if Iran continues to try to screw around and play around and tap around, that's when the Godfather settles all scores.
And how does the Godfather settle this score, KT?
Well, look, he's given the Iranians a choice. They can abide by the terms of the agreement, which are very fair to them. Outrageously fair to them. They just have to give up their nuclear program, stop funding the terrorists, stop killing Americans, and then they're welcomed back into the international community. They get their assets that they've held in foreign banks. Those can be unfrozen. They can trade in the world market. They can be a prosperous nation. If they don't want to do that, if they want to go down the road of nuclear weapons, death to Israel, death to America, kill all the Jews, have terrorist proxies threaten people around the world, try to close the Strait of Hormuz again, then the president has extraordinary capabilities under his control. Military, he could use the military option against Iran's remaining economic sites, against their military sites. He can use the banking capabilities that we have of turning the sanctions on. So Iran has a choice. Join the international community of nations by behaving like a responsible nation. Give up your nuclear weapons, and we'll welcome you. And if that's not your choice, if you want to do something different, we have another plan in mind for you, which is to destroy the rest of their military, potentially take out many more of their leaders, and potentially even to destroy Iran's economy, not just for a year or two, but for a generation.
KT, the big problem is the Iranian people are great people. The Persians are great people, but it's these mullahs that I understand that they're unreasonable, and there's 2 or 3 different Irans. So this is the problem.
That is the problem, John. And the 3 Irans are probably, on one hand, it's the Revolutionary Guard Corps. These are the revolutionary military guys who don't want to settle anything. They want their nuclear weapons, death to Israel. Those are the guys who were supporting the terrorist movements around the world. The second group is probably the mullahs. And even though the mullahs have said in the past, death to America, it's not clear. To me, they could be potentially the swing vote. And then the guys that we're negotiating with are the pragmatists, the civilians, the leader of parliament, the leader of government. They know they've got a country to run. So they want to strike a balance and do a deal with the United States and with the Gulf Arab neighbors and Israel. We'll see who prevails. But one thing that I don't think President Trump is going to allow is, if we get a deal, everybody wants a deal, and then let's say there's one guy with a shoulder-launched missile or with a drone.
You can't help it.
He wants to. He could. That guy isn't going to survive because we're not going to let one guy stand in the way of peace in the world.
There's always going to be that one guy, and that's the problem. My recommendation to the president is to go in there and hit the the guard real bad. I mean, don't go after the infrastructure because we have to pay to rebuild it. Don't go after the Persian people, the civilians. Go after this Iranian guard, and the way we knocked out the leadership before. Knock out the colonels, knock out the generals of this Iranian guard.
We've already taken out the first tier of leadership and the second tier of leadership. We're working on the third. But, we could do the fourth, fifth, sixth tier of leadership until we find somebody who wants to do a deal with us.
But, we can't knock off the infrastructure. We're gonna have to pay for it to build it up again.
So, KT...
And that's the mistake that World War I. The mistake of World War I was, yes, the Germans caused World War I. It was a devastating war. But then the Allies who defeated them said, okay, Germany, we want reparations. We're going to condemn you to a generation of poverty and misery. And that's what gave rise to Hitler. And so, John, you're right. You don't want to have 90 million Iranians mad at you.
Right.
So find a way, get rid of the bad guys, and find a way to work with the people who historically have been close allies of the United States.
So before we lose you, let's go up to Ukraine and Russia. Who is crazier, Putin or Zelensky?
Putin's crazy to start the war, crazy to pursue the war. Zelensky, in retrospect, I mean, it seemed at the time that he was crazy to resist, but because Ukraine has been brilliant in developing drone technology and anti-drone technology, they were able to take the fight to the Russians. And when this war is over, and I think that this war will be over in the next year, before the end of President Trump's term, Ukraine is going to end up being a very powerful country because it has the one weapon everybody in the world wants. It's a cheap, easy, exceedingly effective weapon. And Ukraine, because it had to, developed the capability of building these drones in people's basements. And they can do it brilliantly, better than, millions of contractors have tried to spend, throw $1 billion after this, and we haven't done it as well as a couple of Ukrainians in their basement. So everybody's going to want
a new way to fight a war.
Yeah.
I mean, the regular type of war is going to become obsolete. And I think the way we watch the movies on Terminator 1, I think the future is robots who are going in and fight the war.
Yeah, and by the way, also the drones have been a huge help. They've been helping against Iran, too, because remember, they've been stepping up and saying, here's the technology that we saw. So it's interesting how they're all interconnected, KT.
Yeah. Craig Eden?
We're all scared about nuclear weapons and everything else. And you look at these drones and this technology, which is so easy to replicate and manufacture. It's a whole change of the game here.
It is.
And it's scary here in the United States with that technology, what can be done and what damage can be done.
And the one-way drones, like we saw it. And listen, the IRGC is still using those one-way drones on cargo ships. They got one in the other day.
They wanted to use it in Washington, D.C. with the UFC fight.
Yes,
they were going to have the drones come in.
That's right.
And then they were going to have people with machine guns as all the people were escaping the drones and start just assaulting and killing them.
Right, it's
this
scary.
This is scary stuff.
It's scary.
This is scary stuff.
Yeah, KT, final words, honey.
4th of July, 250 years. We're at the cusp of a golden age for America, and it'll be led by a president who has just stood up for the American people and has the courage of a lion. And I am so proud that we are a country now under that kind of leadership because the next generation will be golden for Americans and, frankly, for the world.
No, and you're right. Thank God President Trump has the guts and the wherewithal. I mean, nobody has taken the fight to Iran like he has, and bravo, thank goodness. And also Venezuela, too. You think about Maduro and everybody else. He's put narco traffickers, everybody on notice, too. It's been extraordinary.
Well, thank you, KT, and have a great 4th of July weekend.
Thank you, KT.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Rita, the top news of the day?
It's the top news of the day. Here's Rita Cosby.
Well, guys, as we have been talking, the Supreme Court rejected President Trump's attempt to limit birthright citizenship in the U.S. by executive order. And also in another blockbuster ruling today by the High Court, the justices also upheld state bans on transgender athletes in women and girls sports. And we're going to talk with one of those athletes coming up, Peyton McNabb, about what she endured with a transgender athlete in her group. Also coming up, this is really sad. Rescue operations are continuing in Venezuela as first responders search for people under the rubble caused by 2 massive earthquakes this week. But rescuers saying they're pulling out more bodies, saying this is slowly turning into a massive recovery operation. The death toll has now climbed to over 1,700, and the number of missing stands in the tens of thousands of people. And of course, our prayers are with them. We're going to talk to Peyton McNabb coming up, and John Solomon, Melissa DeRosa, and also the head of the Sergeants Benevolent Association about the New York City budget. Some of the things it leaves out for the NYPD.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And a big decision by the Supreme Court today, definitely supporting the bans in certain states. And of course, there were 2 of them that they brought up in this case, but there are 27 states that have bans right now. And they essentially said, you can go ahead, states, and keep those bans in place and not have transgenders competing in girls' sports. This is a big win for women's sports and women, I think, in general. And who better than Peyton McNabb, the great volleyball player who's been fighting for this for a long time. Peyton, you must have had tears in your eyes when you saw the decision today from the highest court in the land.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was completely overwhelmed with emotions. I'm so thankful that, they came to the conclusion that women deserve these protections. And, of course, I still am, frustrated that it wasn't a vote, and the 3 women justices were the ones that voted against it. But nonetheless, I am very thankful that truth did prevail today.
And by the way, the 3 are the liberal justices: Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Tell everybody what happened to you, too, when there was a guy playing volleyball with you.
Yeah, my senior year of high school, I was going up against a boy who thought he was a girl on the other team, and I learned very quickly why men's volleyball nets are 7 inches higher than women's, and I was spiked right in the ball hit me right in the face so severely that it knocked me unconscious, and I was in a fencing position, and I ended up suffering from a number of different things. I had a concussion, a brain bleed, partial paralysis on my right side. I had to get extra testing in schools because I'm having a problem retaining information, and it was just really frustrating. I mean, this is my senior year. I had trained my whole life to play collegiate softball, but now since my volleyball season is at the beginning of the year, it completely changed everything I thought I was going to be doing. So it was 100% avoidable, which is what makes it so frustrating, but a lot of good has come of it for sure, because it's been a story that, it's a real story, and it's a genuine story that I've been sharing for years now, and it's really opened eyes of a lot of people who didn't think it was a big deal or didn't understand the severity of it, and once they hear what happened to me, it kind of opens their eyes a little bit and makes them realize, this is a real thing, and it's really affecting girls everywhere.
Is the ruling the Supreme Court enough, or did they have a shortfall on anything?
Yeah. So what this ruling means is the states that have already passed some sort of protection laws are allowed to do that. So it's not even like they were ruling on if every state should have to protect.
So there's a
women and
shortfall
girls.
there. That if states have not ruled on it, then there's no protection.
Correct. Yeah. It's only if states are allowed to do so.
And is it up to the states, is our understanding? So they kind of left it up to the states that haven't done it, right?
Correct. Yeah. So it basically means that the ones that have are allowed to, and they're allowed to still stand.
Well,
and it means that Title IX actually has a purpose.
My feeling is it's not enough.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a great point.
I think
what
the
about
Supreme
the rest of the
Court,
states? Right.
The Supreme Court failed us on the other case, and I think it's failed us on this case because they didn't do enough.
Yeah, and to John's point, Peyton, it's 27 states, right? So what about the others? What about the other 23?
Well, you got 11 states already that refused to go to Washington to celebrate the 250 years anniversary So in those 11 states, do you think they're going to pass a transgender ban?
Sadly, no. Sadly, no.
So what the heck is going on in our country?
It is sad. It is sad. But Peyton, to John's point, hopefully the Supreme Court at some point does it with all 50 states. Yeah. That's a great point.
They fumbled. They kicked it to the states. Mistake.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for coming on, and we have to fix it all the way. Thank you, and keep fighting for America, and keep fighting for girls, because I got a daughter too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peyton, thank you. Thank you,
every
Peyton.
good wish. God bless you.
Yeah, Peyton, you stay strong. Thank you.
Breaking news. We got John Solomon with some hot news.
Breaking news, WABC.
And joining us now is John Solomon for the very latest. John, what do you got?
We've been talking about the Supreme Court, what it did and didn't do right now, just hours after the birthright citizenship law. There is work underway in the Congress to start to address it. The Supreme Court didn't preclude Congress from fixing this problem. It just said that birthright citizenship is an entitlement protected by the Constitution. But you could have Congress, and there were people working on this right now in the first few hours after this decision, that would ban those birth tourism centers, saying
but
that's an illegal business in America.
Votes in the Senate.
How are you going to get that?
All we're doing is jerking off on it.
Right.
You don't.
They can't pass the Save America Act.
We don't. Hold on.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I want to hear it.
I'm going to be a joyful warrior. I think I have some good news for everybody who's frustrated by the body of inaction, the marble asylum that the Senate is. First off, there is an effort to get the Save America Act stripped down to just two things, a voter ID and citizenship checks. Those two can be tied to funding mechanism, and they're going to try to put it into the defense bill in the House and move it over to the Senate. The last time they did this, it had two other provisions. It had women in sports, and it had birthright citizenship. Stripping those two out, because those don't have a necessary funding stream, could put the Senate parliamentarian in a position of saying, yeah, you can pass those two. They're going to try it this weekend. So there is a audible that's been called in the huddle of Donald Trump's political playbook. That's happening. Likewise, you can do some things right now that the Supreme Court left wide open for Congress to do, and they can be done as reconciliation bills. You can put in a reconciliation bill that no state can get any federal funds if it allows any business to create birth tourism. That would outlaw birth tourism. You only need 51 votes to get it through the Senate. Now, we'll see if John Thune can get 51. There are some other ones. You can also say that we're upholding a birthright citizenship, but any state that allows birthright citizenship by letting a illegal alien into the country would have their federal funds stripped. That would essentially eliminate birthright citizenship from illegal aliens. That would substantially reduce the number of illegal aliens or number of people who are giving birth in circumstances coming to the United States that most Americans disagree with. So a lot of work behind the scenes. I know it's been a depressing couple of days. A couple of rulings didn't go conservatives' way. There are some very smart people working on some very smart 51-vote Senate passed ideas right now.
All right, so I'm going to play devil's advocate because sometimes they can't even get the 51 votes.
Well, that I can't fix that math. No one can fix that.
Right.
Math,
I mean, let's just talk about it. Yeah. Like yesterday, President Trump was blasting Lisa Murkowski in Alaska. You know, I mean, so you may not even be able to get 51, John.
Yeah, well, right now they're at 50 in the Save America Act, which means that J.D. Vance becomes 51 long as all the Republicans show up. So that's a good sign. In addition, one time, not routinely, but one time, Susan Collins voted in favor of it. She's been a holdout previously. So you could get to 50-51 and Save America. We don't know yet on birthright citizenship, but I would suspect most Republican senators would have a hard time saying, oh, we like Chinese people coming here and creating a birth tourism ministry, and we like illegal aliens giving birth here. I think those two you could see potentially getting to 50-51. But you're right, you got to work it. The good news is other presidents would have thrown their hands up on a day like today and said, you know what, can't change the status quo. It's over with. Not Donald Trump. He's already got playbook 3 and 4 in the works.
Wow. Well, let's see where this goes, John. There's obviously a lot of layers to this.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously President Trump knows a lot of the layers, but it's pretty complex, especially in an election year, too. That's the issue, too, as we're seeing even with some Republicans.
All right. I'm going to circle something for the court for next year because the next session starts in September. Keep an eye on Missouri. Missouri's Attorney General, Catherine Hanaway, has begun litigation. It's already at the federal appeals court. It can make it to the Supreme Court in the fall. Could be decided that you can no longer count illegal aliens in the census. That would substantially redraw the map in America. 14 to 18 Democrat House seats would suddenly move to the Republican Party column. That will be the big, I predict, that plus the assault weapons ban will be two of the biggest potential decisions in next year's Supreme Court. Just put a circle around that one right now.
Yeah, I wish we could put a circle on it today, but that's a whole other story. John, thank you very much.
Good
Great
to be with
stuff.
you guys.
Thank you very much. And John, I understand we have somebody calling in right now.
Melissa DeRosa, why don't you take that?
And joining us now here on Katz and Cosby is great Democratic strategist Melissa DeRosa. Melissa, everybody's wondering, in the next few hours, the polls are going to close in Colorado. There's a couple definitely far left candidates, socialists on the ballot there. Is this going to be a national trend beyond New York? That's what everyone's wondering tonight.
Well, great to chat with you, Rita. I mean, I think it already is a national trend. It's not a governing coalition yet, but, we've seen the DSA, the Democratic Socialists, pick up mayoral seats in Chicago and Boston, potentially out in LA. We'll see what happens there. They've got squad members in Michigan. And so they are actively expanding, beyond New York City. But I think New York City is the canary in the coal mine. I think it is forecasting what's to come. And these people are certainly electable in Democratic primaries. But the question is then what happens in the general election? And then do we end up losing these seats like in Michigan, where I think that if El Sayed, who is the DSA, the Democratic Socialist person who hangs around with, Hassan Piker, who says America deserves 9/11 and is sort of noun verb AIPAC, could win, that primary in Michigan. And obviously we're seeing what's going on with Plattner. And so then do they lose these seats that otherwise could be up for grabs in the general election? And I think that is what we're watching play out. So absolutely.
You talked about in Denver, one of these candidates, Milad Kiros, this one in particular. I mean, Melissa, it's really troubling. She came out and essentially said America deserved 9/11, that October 7th was basically brought on by the Jewish state. She wouldn't even acknowledge there was this anti-Semitic attack that took place in Colorado where the guy admitted he was looking for Jews. He was shouting Free Palestine. He firebombed a group of Jewish protesters, and she still refused to say it's anti-Semitic.
Well, listen, this is the thing. I mean, when people tell you who they are, believe them. And you look at someone like Zoran Mamdani, you look at this woman who just defeated Adriano Espaillat, you look at this person in Denver who you're just talking about, you look at El Sayed, who's hanging out with Hassan Piker. You look at Graham Plattner, who literally had a Nazi tattoo until 5 minutes ago. And the tie that binds all of them is not an affordability agenda. It's an anti-Semitism, anti-Israel agenda. And so I think that there's something much larger going on here, and that mainstream Democrats need to be forcefully calling it out and stamping it out, or else you're going to end up with a scenario where we have a hate-filled party who's completely taken over and then casts out Democrats into the wilderness for the next decade at least.
Melissa, John Katsimatidis, is there any leadership at all in the Democratic Party trying to bring back common sense?
Well, this is the thing, John. I mean, think about who the leaders are right now of the party. You've got Hakeem Jeffries in Brooklyn, and you've got Chuck Schumer in Brooklyn. Chuck is essentially invisible. I mean, got a lot of respect for the public service he's given to the state of New York over the years, but he is practically invisible when it comes to leadership in the party, and his numbers are, worse than Donald Trump's numbers in New York. It's really astounding. And Hakeem, who I think is doing a great job, doing everything he can to take back the House, it doesn't seem like he and that coalition is putting forth a governing agenda that can try to, give people an alternative to what the DSA is doing. And that's really what we need, is an alternative vision. The abundance theory. We need someone out there saying, build, baby, build, good paying jobs, rebuild infrastructure. Here's my innovation plan. Here's my AI plan. Here's my data center plan. Here's how we're going to tackle the fact that kids are going to graduate from college and not get the same kind of jobs they got 10 years ago. And no one's doing that. And so in that vacuum, steps these Looney Tunes who, frankly, just put forward fanciful things, which free this, free that, free this, free that, which is just enough to get you elected, but then gets everybody nowhere in the end. And then again, it's the anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, anti-AIPAC wing. And that's where we sort of are. So, no, I think sadly, Melissa, the Democratic Party doesn't have someone putting forth an alternative agenda right now.
Let's go back to normal life. And the question is, 10 Democratic states said they're not going to go to Washington to celebrate 250 years.
Actually, John, I have an update. It's 11.
It's 11.
It's 11.
What is the pulse of the common sense Democrats that are still around of saying that about these 11 states?
I participated in an event in South Carolina a couple of weeks ago. It was on Memorial Day weekend. It was this event that was a call to humanity, and it was women from both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party coming together to celebrate America 250 and talk about bipartisan solutions to issues that cross party lines. And on the Democratic Party side, it was chaired by Donna Brazile, and on the Republican side, it was chaired by Lara Trump. And I was there, and so was Laura Ingraham. And, there were people from all across the spectrum who are saying this country is worth fighting for. There are issues that transcend partisanship that we should all be working together on. And what's so troubling to me is that in the 250th anniversary of the country, we can't find it in us to come together and celebrate what we're all here for and try at least to put forth a vision moving forward that can unite us. And so it's sad. It's very sad, and it's a real statement on our time.
And, we just have literally about 30 seconds. Real quick, the New York City budget. There was a handshake today, literally 30 seconds. Melissa, your thought?
No, it's a deal that has managed to piss off the left and the right. Excuse my language. But, they're not happy because they're not doing what had been promised in terms of increasing a head count for the NYPD. They threw that overboard in order to do these additional housing vouchers, but what they got on the housing vouchers is much less than what the advocates wanted. So, people are holding their nose and voting for this. Julie Menon is, ferociously trying to whip the votes, which currently I'm not sure that they've got. So, again, it's going to be a budget that I think manages to upset all sides.
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. Melissa, thank you so much. We always love having you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Happy 4th if I don't talk to you before.
Happy 4th.
You too. And everybody, when we come back, the New York City budget gets a handshake, but the cops are shaking their heads. We're going to talk to the head of the Sergeant Benevolent Association when we come back.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Well, the NYPD Sergeants Benevolent Association Executive Board is going to continue for another term as they were unanimously nominated to continue. And that includes our next guest, the president of the NYPD Sergeants Benevolent Association. Congrats, Vinny. Vinny Valalong.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
And I understand the whole board got reelected.
Yeah, we did. It's been a lot of work the past 4 years, and I can tell you that the board did a fantastic job. We went through with contract and just keeping up, the everyday working environment for our men and women. I mean, that's the most important thing.
Well, you guys do a great job and represent so many of them. It's so important. Tell us what you think of the budget today, the handshake that happened between City Council, and we saw it with City Council Speaker Julie Menon and New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. You feel it falls woefully short for the NYPD and for public safety.
This is ridiculous. I mean, what else do they have in store for us if this is what they're going to present the first 4 or 5 months into their terms? A budget is supposed to balance the books. It's supposed to make things better, for your checkbook or whatever it is, at least in your household. And you're supposed to prioritize where money goes so you can keep things up and work in working order. And that's exactly what they didn't do. I mean, the agreement that they made today is going to cost the city, it's going to cost the people of the city a lot. They're, in essence, they're defunding the men and women who keep the city safe every single day. And it's a product that the citizens and the business people of this city deserve when they pay their taxes. I say shame on the speaker, shame on the city council, for not standing pat against the mayor. He promised 500 plus new cops, and basically overnight that all disappeared, and they're all okay with that. So I don't understand how this makes any sense. They can freeze rent for 2 years, but in reality they can't freeze violent crime, which is it's going to tick up as soon as summer starts.
Yeah, talk about what this means to public safety, Vincent Val, along with the Sergeants Benevolent Association. What does it mean for the community if they don't have more officers coming in?
I don't think it makes a difference really to city council what it means to the community. The community's screaming for more cops. The community's screaming for less crime. And it's not just the major crimes. They're screaming for the petty crimes that are going on and making everyday life difficult for them. And when you have police officers and sergeants and every rank that are doing these extended tours, at some point in time, you only can bend so much before you break. And the men and women of this job are exhausted right now. And people can try and candy coat it all they want, but the reality of it is, at some point in time, they're just going to be coming to work and, doing the minimal that they can do because they don't have the energy in order to get this job done. We don't have the people. We don't have the resources. And what they're doing now is just stretching everything very thin.
Vincent, when I ran for mayor, I advocated that for firemen and policemen should have affordable housing to live within the 5 boroughs. Because, if I owned a building, I'd rather have 5 or 10 of your guys in the building.
Yep.
I mean, and I've said that to all the politicians. I think that's, and not only that, then you could vote. Right now, what percentage of your cops live outside the 5 boroughs?
There's probably a big percentage. Off the top of my head, I don't have that number, but they try and get as far away as the city as possible, and maximize their earnings in order to have a better life.
Yeah, because they can't afford it, right? Is the point?
Yeah, but
right?
you can balance it out if you give them affordable housing.
No, exactly. But as it is now, without that, it's too hard for them, right?
Yes, and they don't listen. The city council members do not want the more cops living inside the city itself, because then it's going to wind up being votes against them.
Yes.
So they're never going to go for anything like that. I mean, you have Caban that posted on social media that she's happy that there's no more police, that we're getting rid of the 500 plus police officers. There's no need for them. Well, you know what? At some point in time, when they come knocking on her door, and I'm not talking about the cops, I'm talking about the other part of society that's out to steal and rob. Let's see who she calls at that point in time.
Vinny, it's Judge Richard Weinberg. As you may recall, she came within a few votes of being elected DA in Queens, if you remember correctly.
Yes, I do. Yep.
Okay, what a disaster that would have been for the people of Queens. This is somebody who's anti-police, anti-quality of life, anti-law enforcement, anti-public safety, and she came within a hair's breadth of being DA in Queens County. What a disaster. And for her to take a victory lap on the failure of the city council and the mayor to cut a deal to have more cops is absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't allow for the fact that people are on vacation, people are retiring. You have to have the police classes filled. You have to have full strength. When not everybody who's on the payroll is out on the streets, you need both the perception and the reality of cops out there if you're going to have public safety.
Yeah, I mean, you can't keep playing this game. You're going to be playing catch up with trying to get people to take this job while the experienced people walk out the door, and you're going to be left with a bunch of cops that really aren't being trained by, in the best way that they can by the senior officers, and having a lot of knowledge passed to them before they eventually do leave the job. Now, these city council members, I mean, again, we talked about this before. I mean, elections have consequences. Luckily for the people in Queens, they weren't stuck with her as their DA.
Yeah, thank God.
Vincent Vallalong, the president of the Sergeants Benevolent Association, thank you so much, and keep fighting for our people.
Yeah, and keep up the great work, and I'm glad you guys are going to be there.
Breaking news while we're still here, and then we have to.
Thank you, Vinny.
And then we have to go away.
Yep, quick breaking news, guys.
Breaking news, WABC.
And this is interesting, John. President Trump has announced that Republicans are going to hold their first ever national convention ahead of the midterm elections. He says it's going to be in Dallas on September 9th and 10th. So that's an interesting time, but it is going to be Dallas, September 9th and 10th. First time midterm elections, because he obviously wants to galvanize everybody prior
midterm
to
convention?
We
yes,
got to go.
midterm
Mark
convention.
Levin, Mark Levin is already on. We're going to join Mark Levin in progress.
But what do we stand
what do
for?
we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
God bless America.
Thanks for listening to Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. You can hear Katz and Cosby weekdays at 5. It's the 5 o'clock show on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?